Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Tracy DeShazer, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Deputy Chief Administrative Officer for Human Services for the City of Richmond. In this role, I'm fortunate to lead a team that positively impacts the daily lives of each and every Richmonder. From the work we do to support children, families, and our newest residents, to our efforts to provide safe places for you to recreate in our community centers, parks, and on our trails. The work that we do is expansive. It's critical and it's often life-saving. You see, we connect families to resources in their most vulnerable times of need. We help residents connect to better professional opportunities through our workforce training. We allow you to wonder as you get lost in the stacks of our libraries. And through efforts like this one, in the spirit of Sankofa, well, we support you in connecting back to oneself. According to the Equal Justice Initiative, roughly half of all enslaved people were separated from their spouses and parents. About 1 in 4 of those sold were children. Slaveholders threatened separation to maintain control, forcing enslaved people to live with the constant fear of losing a loved one. So you see, although the period of enslavement in the United States is no more, the vestiges of its brutal legacy, they linger. Its vestiges have prevented many from connecting back to their ancestors. So we view this Gilpin Genealogy project as a way to help residents better understand the past, connect with the present, and imagine the future. And we are thrilled to have the support of our friends here at the Virginia Museum of History and Culture in doing just that. You see, the Virginia Museum of History and Culture, it recognizes the importance of building deep and lasting relationships with individuals and organizations in its community and across the Commonwealth. This is evident through their expansive exhibits, diverse and inclusive programming, and in their staff. And we are able to host today's event here in large part due to Joseph Rogers, Manager of Partnerships and Community Engagement here at the museum. Joseph was born in Roanoke, Virginia, not far from my hometown in Danville, Virginia. And while there in Roanoke, he developed an appreciation of history at an early age, a love instilled in him by his parents. He has served in a number of capacities in museums and serves as an incredible bridge between community and the rich history archived here at the Virginia Museum of History and Culture. Joseph, thank you to you and your colleagues for your support and for having us today. It's now my pleasure to turn the program over to you.
Thank you so much for that incredible introduction, and thank you all for being here today. As was mentioned, my name is Joseph Rogers, and I am the director now of community engagement and partnerships here at the Virginia Museum of History and Culture. The museum itself is an old institution. It is the oldest cultural institution in the Commonwealth of Virginia, in fact. And amongst state history museums, it is in the top 5 oldest institutions in the country. The institution was established in 1831, and in its original charter, it has the lines in there to promote the best interests of our citizens. To promote the best interests of our citizens. And I have to think, standing here and now, with the concept and the program that we have before us, which citizens they were thinking of when they wrote it in 1831. And I ask that question because this program is about reclaiming our time. This is about reclaiming the citizenship that we were duly owed through the blood, sweat, and tears of those who worked this soil, those from whom the soil was taken, and those who had themselves worked to make this place what it is. I also happen to have the blessing to be the president of the Greater Richmond chapter of the Afro-American Historical and Genealogical Society. This is a role in which I take great pride because I have the unique chance of knowing several aspects of my family history. I know who my great-great-great-grandfather was, James Apostle Fields, enslaved at birth, I will say, in 1844, or in 1834, who at a very young age managed to seize his own freedom in the midst of war, who was separated from his mother, separated from his father. His mother, Martha Ann, and his father, Washington Fields, at the time of the Civil War, were not recognized in their marriage, despite the fact that they had, at that point, 11 children between them. Just the two of them. 11 children. Having been separated from one plantation, from one farm to the other, Washington Fields making his way to see Martha every weekend that he could. The dedication that it takes to put in that kind of effort to maintain and build a family that would not be recognized until after the end of enslavement in the United States. Despite all of that, these communities were built. These families were made. These people saw and recognized each other. They claimed what was theirs. And now you get to claim what is yours. This is an important moment to be able to share here in this place, in this institution, which may not have been thinking about Martha Ann or George Washington or Washington Fields or James Fields at any point in time until recent history. But now, here in these rooms, in these spaces, we get to reclaim that time. We get to take that space, and we get to sit here as equals, as importantly seen. If you have the chance to go through the galleries today, which will be open to all of you at no cost, of course, I encourage you to see the Treasures of Virginia Gallery. There, this institution, which has been collecting for nearly 200 years, has the very journal that George Washington himself wrote in during his first term of his presidency. And next to that, given equal weight and measure, the bench, the Woolworth counter that those in Richmond, those brave young people in Richmond, sat at to demand equal rights in 1960. There we have the writing desk of Anne Spencer, given equal weight and measure with those who had been presidents of the United States. This is what that means to have this in this space at this time in your State History Museum. I don't want to belabor the point much longer, but I do want to encourage you all that as you are able to make these connections today, as you think about and reflect on your own family's connections, think about how you can bring that community back, how you can bring those people together, and how you can reclaim your time. So without wasting any more time, I would like to introduce the person who brought all of this together, without whom it could not be possible, Dr. Paula Royster. And a brief introduction, if I can, because I want to make sure that the accolades are well given. Dr. Royster is the founder and CEO of the Center for African American Genealogical Research, Incorporated. Through the study of diasporic African family, Dr. Royster examines how historical productions of identity, cultural, national, transnational, and racial, are articulated and re-articulated through structural systems that result in racialized exclusions and inequities. Through various research design models and comparative analysis, she leads conversations on building new narratives from new perspectives as an urgent matter of social justice. Dr. Royster is a two-time Fulbright Scholar grantee and has been awarded the 2 diversity speaker grants through the U.S. Department of the State's Diversity Speakers Program. She is an educator and an advisor to doctoral students. And she holds an interdisciplinary PhD in humanities and culture with a secondary major in public policy and social justice, as well as an advanced graduate certificate in creative writing. She is a published author and has received numerous awards for her research efforts. And so again, without any further ado, Dr. Paula Royster.
It's the beautiful language of my ancestors, and it was stolen from me. So I commit myself to reclaiming not just the memory, the customs, the habits, but the language also. Thank you to the city of Richmond for being at the forefront of this effort. Tracy DeSasia, thank you. And your entire team. Patty, Asita, JD, Petulia, and he's not gonna like this, the grandfather of it all, Mr. Reggie Gordon. I also want to thank the Virginia Museum of History and Culture for being so generous with the space, dropping everything to make sure that this was a comfortable and memorable experience for all. They didn't have to do it. Given the history of this institution, I think it is fitting that we come back and create new history in the 21st century, don't you? I also want to thank Eunice Hagler, Mr. Reverend Jarvis Bailey, for driving from Fredericksburg with me today, and my family, of course, who is here, and for all of those who have sent me emails or phone calls, words of encouragement, expressing a great deal of pride and satisfaction that the time has come to reveal a history hidden in plain view. That's what I do. And I hope at the end of this process that the descendants who didn't ask for me to find necessarily a famous ancestor, a wealthy ancestor, they just wanted to know whose shoulders they stood on. It's a basic human right. And we don't have to prove our humanity anymore. The way this program will work today is I will call each descendant up at one time. They have binders on their laps. It contains a partial list of things, of documents to support the research that I've conducted over the last 8 months, and they have been very, very patient, waiting for this day, prodding and asking questions, trying to get information from me. Well, your day has come. And then I will move in to announce their DNA results. Immediately following that, the stage will be cleared, and we're going to perform a wedding for each family. A couple has been selected who has, as it's already been said, lived as husband and wife, but did not get the dignity and the respect of being called Mr. and Mrs. The other wonderful thing about this process as they jump the broom Ed Jewett, the clerk of the court, has told me that he is going to create a special file so that these records will be recorded in the annals of Richmond's history. One more thing. It was not possible to answer every question. My goal was to build enough information that these families could continue the research on their own or wait for this with the help of OGS. So, my first descendant, I was going to say victim, but she's looking at me all petrified. Please welcome Janice Allen. I'm going to see how we can work these microphones. You can take a seat right there, right on the front row, Janice. Right on the front row. All right, I'm just going to take it. It's not really theft because I didn't go more than 50 feet. So Janice, your maiden name is Anderson.
Yes, ma'am.
That's right. So, you know I am not going to divulge any family secrets. I'll leave that for the descendants to peruse for themselves. We are going to be talking about the survival, the endurance, what they did to survive so that you could be here. Let me have your book. In here, I have two profiles for you. You were interested in your mother's side of the family, the Caroline side of the family, right? As well as the Andersons. So what I did is I looked at two of your, I believe these go back to your third great grandparents on both sides. And what I found is that they were not free people, not initially. And they lived in one area in Caroline, but they were separated. Tracy alluded to the fact that children were put into the system of bondage. I want to add something to that at the age of 6. So as soon as they were old enough to work, they were separated. And they only came back when the War of the Rebellion was over. There's nothing civil about war, so I try not to even acknowledge that. So in here I have your, some of your documents. It's a very lengthy file, and I will email it to you. We have death records. We have marriage records. We have census records. Your family, one of the members of your family actually served in the Civil War. So there should be a military record in here for him. Here's a list of the free Negroes. As soon as the first election came in 1867, your family, everybody that was able, voted. Yes. That would be you guys?
That would be us, yes.
I'm going to move right to your DNA because we're, oh my goodness. I need you. I need you. We're going to move right into your DNA. This is yours, dear.
Thank you, ma'am.
To try to catch up on some of this time. Are you excited?
I am.
I'm excited for you.
Because you know.
I sure do. I sure do. So what I want to say about this DNA, for people who are not familiar with it, if you're thinking about it, you should view the results of your DNA from the same perspective that you view that everything else is viewed from. That is to say, it comes sometimes from a very Eurocentric perspective. If you agree that all human civilizations came from Africa, then all else came from Africa. Your result puts you in the haplogroup L3. And you see that map? Yes. L3 is like the granddaughter, great-granddaughter of Eve. And they migrated out of East Africa. You see it goes up through Ethiopia, the Sudan, and then it gets right about the center of the earth, and it goes west towards Niger, Chad, Burkina Faso. Your particular L3, I'm just giving the group, haplogroup, but yours is West Africa. It's West African mostly, but remember that we were scattered. We didn't just leave our places in East Africa. We were forced to leave. Incursions into the continent caused us to leave, group up with other people whose villages had been destroyed, and created a new identity. Yours is decidedly Chad. Does that sound right? Did you have any?
I had no, I told you I had no clue. I'm dependent on you on this.
All right, yours is decidedly Chad. All right, that's you. All right, I'm going to take the next person. Thank you. Can you go to that end? Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Excuse me for passing.
That's all right. Charmaine Barbour Brown. Come on. I'm trying to go in alphabetical order here. I want to say this. Charmaine lost her grandmother, and today is they're burying her, so I appreciate her being here in the spirit of Mrs. Simmons. You were interested on her side of the family because you didn't know much about her. Is that right? And as timing would have it, she's now gone on to glory, and she knows the full story herself. I'm going to start with your fourth great-grandfather, John Clark. He was born in 1787 in Bannister, and he married a lady named Fanny, and they had Abraham Clark. Abraham Clark married Caroline Mitchell and Lemuel. They had Lemuel in 35. Caroline also had a 2-year-old son, Walter Mitchell, prior to the marriage to Abraham. Laura, I'm going to your grandmother, was married to John Hardy Barbour. According to the records, she was 101 years old. According to the records. She was born in Tillis Creek in Dade County, Georgia. Her mother was Daisy Williams, right? Daisy was born in March 1873 in Lawrence, Georgia. She married William L. Simmons in 1890, which by then it was legal. Daisy's parents were Thomas Williams and Laura DeLyons. Did you know that? No. All right. Thomas was born in South Carolina in 1838. His wife Laura was born in 1851 in Chatham, Georgia. Now you can imagine how they would have met each other, right? That meant that somebody had to move from one place to the next. So that represents another separation in the family. His parents were Judge DeLyons and Lavinia. Judge was born in 1830 in North Carolina and died at the age of 50 in Savannah, Georgia, where his wife was born in 1831. She lived with her daughter Martha until she passed in 1914, and she's buried at, get this, Cross the Creek Cemetery. And there's a story behind that. If you were African American, you had to cross the creek to bury your family. Not right in town. You had to go across the creek. Currently, that cemetery is hidden by behind a water treatment plant today. The thing I wanted to share with you was that when I was looking through your family history, I noticed a few names that I had seen before because I've done this project in Fredericksburg. And the Barbours, who also Barbers and in some cases Babers, they had a settlement out in a place called Middleburg, Virginia. They founded the place. And they married into the Poles family. And so your connection to the Poles family is by way of a guy named French Poles. French Poles was the father of Spotswood Poles, Negro Leagues baseball player always compared to Ty Cobb. Your relative, your distant cousin in Fredericksburg is Gay Adegbalola. Now, I know you've seen Gay's pictures in some of these museums around here. She was a very well-known blues woman. She's in her 80s. She could not be here. But I think after today, I'm going to try to arrange a time in September for you guys to meet your cousins. But here is the kicker. I heard somebody mention Danville. And when I looked at your family names, DeShazer was there. That's Tracy DeShazer over there.
When she said Danville, I said, oh, she might be my favorite.
You see, you just never know. When we talk about the history of American systems of commerce and capitalism, we tend to forget that our families were torn apart over and over and over again. We don't know if our neighbor is our cousin. Right. When we talk about crime, we don't know if we are killing members of our family because that information has been kept hidden from us, almost erased. It's important to have this information. So y'all should get together a little later. You came from haplogroup L2. L2 is the most prominent haplogroup type for people of African descent in the United States. But it is distinctly West African, and yours is Ghanaian. Ghanaian. Mm-hmm. From Ghana. From Ghana. The Akan tribes are very large groups of people. And there are places like Jamaica and Barbados, the islands, where you will find Cuba. You will find these. You know what? You look Ghanaian. You do. I'm not kidding. You have the eye. You have it. Oh, well, that's where it is. That's where it is. All right. So you are Ghanaian. We need to get you a name. So figure out what day of the week you were born, and that'll be your name. All right. All right. Thank you, Charmaine. Michelle Bryant. Now, Michelle, I talked to her not long ago, and she said, you don't know how hard it's been for me not to call you. And so what I did was I met with them at the community day over at Gilpin Court, right here. And I told them once I got their permission to go forward and decided that they were going to be a part of the program, we would do the DNA analysis. It would take 7 to 9 weeks for it to come back. And then there was going to be a quiet period, and that was the research period. And then I would come back and tell them that we're ready to go, and I did that about a month ago. She said, "You have no idea." Michelle, whew, it's been a long day. I'm going to give you an early birthday present. Do you know anything about Prince George's County in Maryland? Prince George's County, as far as I know, is the wealthiest black community in the United States. Is that right? Yeah. Do you know why it's wealthy? Because your family was there. Your fourth great-grandfather was John Clark. He was born in 1787. No, that's not you. Your sixth great-grandfather was Charles Butler, born in 1750 in Maryland, and he married a woman named Rhoda Langston. Well, not really, because Rhoda was not free. But they went on and they had a son named Jacob James, your fifth great-grandfather. Jacob had 6 kids, and one of them was Thomas James Smith Butler. Now, he went by a few different names in the record, so he was a little hard to keep up with. He was born in 1805, and he married a woman named Matilda Proctor. And the thing about Proctors, in the genealogy circles, everybody knows that the first successful crossover passing for white were the Proctors out of Virginia. And in this particular community, it was a free society, a free community, and they married into, if you weren't married to a Proctor, you were married to a Newman, or you were married to a Butler. So they kind of kept it within the circles, because the condition of the child is based on the condition of the mother. So they had to marry other free people. Thomas had George Henry Butler, and together they had Norman Butler, who had William Butler Sr., who had William Butler Jr., who had Clarence, who had you. In the 1790 census, Charles Butler, Jacob Butler, Josiah Butler, and the mother, Rhodey Butler, were all free in 1790. One of your other relatives, your great-grandfather, Samuel David Floyd, born in 1916 in Leesburg, Georgia, served in World War II as a tech service branch rank, which meant he was labor. He is interred at Indiantown Gap National Cemetery in Lebanon, Pennsylvania. But there's more. Sylvester Newman was in the 9th Regiment of the U.S. Colored Troops, and he fought in the Civil War. They weren't ordinary people. They went on in spite of what was going on around them. So now for your DNA result. You ready for this? You two have an L2 result. It's not the same. There are letters and numbers that come after it. Yours goes back to, with the highest frequency, to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Those are the islands. But do you know where they came from? The Cameroons. That is where your origins are, from the Cameroons. All right. I'm going to let you think about it while I bring up Jordan. Thank you so much. So Jordan is standing in for his father, Vincent, who happens to be Charmaine's husband, because Vincent is a hard-working man and he had to work today. But strong is as strong does, and he said, my son will stand in my place, and I said, send him on. Yeah, sit on right down here. This millennial. Are you a millennial? What generation are you? You are a millennial?
Yeah, I'm 2008.
All right. Well, you'll be all right then. Okay. I have to check. Your dad wanted to know more about his mom's side of the family, the Browns. His mother's father was David Brown, born in 1915 in South Carolina. Now, I know your dad did not know where he was born, but that's exactly where he was born. He served in World War II and Korea, and his father was John David Brown, and his mother was Carrie Gilliard, born in 1878 in Abbeville, South Carolina. Now, your grandmother, who married John David Brown, was Gertrude Beltrop, and it's misspelled quite often in the records. She was born in 1922 in Vance, North Carolina. Her parents were Haywood and Lucy Vaughn. Haywood's parents were Kelly Balthrop and Lizzie Barnes. 4 of the 9 children that Carrie fathered with his second wife, Lizzie, who was 22 years his junior. That was perfectly acceptable back then. Lizzie's parents were James and Frankie Scales, both born in North Carolina. James had a brother named Haywood, and their parents were Newton and Sadie Scales, born about 1816 in Henderson, North Carolina. Kelly's parents, Alan, born 1820, Lizzie, born in 1818, were born in North Carolina, and if it were legal for them to marry back then, their date would have been about 1845. Now, for you, this project, of course, if you were familiar with DNA, we can only get the mitochondrial DNA for these purposes from women. But where we had males to participate, we got both maternal and paternal results. And that's important because we don't know who else is looking for their families out there. So let me just tell you from which kingdom you come from. Do I have your kingdom? Yes, I do. So your paternal side is E, haplogroup E. So women are going to be L. If you're from your African ancestry, we'll start with L to represent mitochondrial Eve. And if you're male and you're closely related to Adam or you descend from the Adam branch, it will start with E. So here you see your family started down close to Eve, going up through Ethiopia. Then you had 3 branches split off, going down to Angola, then going west over to like to Mali and Mauritania, then going north up through Egypt, over to Liberia and Algeria. So your line went west from East Africa. I'm going to give you this. Your haplogroup was L3 on your dad's mom's side, which is, it's found in Africa, dates about 50,000 years ago. But let me give you the exact, I'm just a mess. Yoruba. Yoruba. Nigeria. That means you're Nigerian too, bro. You got some in you too. That was distinctly Yoruba. It was no question about it. So on your dad's mom's side, that's where they came from. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. And you take second row. Second row. Who's left? I'm not saving the best for last. Just trying to get through my papers. I'll take you, Eric. You look like you anxious to get up here. My students aren't so anxious. Come on up here, Eric Clay. Now, you guys know Eric Clay. Is he a familiar face in this community? How are you? So
You have to ask him. That's my dad. That's the Clay right there.
that's the Clay right there. All right. I'm glad. Welcome. I'm glad to see you here. So, Eric, you said that you knew a lot about your mother's side of the family. You wanted to know more about your dad's side. The other way around. Wow. You know a lot about his side. You'll find out a lot about your mom too on that in that book. Um, when I looked at your, I'm going to speed this up. When I look, I'm just going to tell. I'm just going to give it to you straight. I'm going to send you a file with a list of names. And if I were you, I would take that file and start doing my research. Because if you look at those names, Revels comes up. And my strong suspicion is that you were related to Senator Hiram Revels, the first black U.S. Senator of the United States. That's the short of it. And your DNA result, now, Eric was a wise guy. He got into his account before. I said, Eric, did you? No, I didn't change the password. I said, you changed the password. Give me the password. So I changed it to something that he couldn't get back into. You two are EM2. Out of 6,200 DNA tested descendants who profiled with this EM2, they're saying that you're most likely Ghanaian. Yours was L1 on your mother's side. It was a little more than that, because mine was L1B1A. Yours was L1B1A, which means that Fulani, and that would mean that the closest or the furthest mitochondrial ancestor is the Queen of Sheba. That's where it comes from, on your mother's side. And your father's side, it is Nigeria. Yeah. Is that right? All right. Thank you. Who's next? I want Mrs. Gilbert. I have been trying to find this woman. I had to send people out looking for her. But we got her here, and I'm so grateful to you. Look, she had to work today, too. And she hustled on over here because she didn't want to miss this, and I don't blame her. I appreciate you working all day and then coming over here to suffer through me. I appreciate you, Miss Gilbert. I'm going to give you the short of your story, too. And the reason why I know it so well is because I kept going back to it. I couldn't figure out what exactly was going on with your family. You know, when people lived in close proximity to each other, you didn't have movie theaters. There was no texting. You know, you couldn't get in your car and drive away. Whatever entertainment you got was nearby, and whoever was available was also nearby. And then there were a lot of technicalities thrown in. Well, we're not full brothers and sisters. We're second cousins, so it really doesn't matter, right? Do you understand what I'm saying? Just trying to set the stage. Your daughter, Clarity, no, no, no. No, no, no. You know what? I don't have yours written down, and you know why? Because I think I memorized it. Your great-grandmother was Rebecca Kinney, and her mother was Ida. The confusion came in because Ida married a guy named Arthur Kinney, and her daddy's name was Arthur Kinney. So I don't know what happened. And maybe she didn't get married. Maybe that's why she kept her name Kinney. That's one possibility. Arthur Kennedy also had several names. He went by Edmund, Edward, Ned. He married 3 times, and his third wife was 20 years younger than him, and her name was Hattie. Does that? Her name was Hattie. Her name was Hattie Jasper. And her father was Shadrach. Shadrach's father was Reverend John Jasper. But because of those little indiscretions, you're like the half second great granddaughter of an abolitionist, Reverend John Jasper. That's why I was looking for you, because I thought you should know that information.
Well, I remember my great aunt Elizabeth Kinney Tyler. She had a portfolio of John Jasper, and I think my sister has it. Yeah.
And that's probably why.
Yeah, that's probably why.
Listen, I can arrange some press. Yeah, we can do this now. We can take it on the road. Mrs. Gilbert, your haplogroup type has been modified and co-modified into this thing called HV7.
Oh, and I remember another thing. My great uncle Thomas Kinney, he was a member of 6 Months Out.
Are you a member?
No, I'm a member of Mount Carmel.
Right. All right. But listen, you all, it's home to you. You should always be welcome. And I'm certain that 6 Mount Zion Baptist Church will reach out to you and welcome you through those doors, right? Your haplogroup type is HV7. It's showing mostly in Italy. And here's what I want to, now listen, this is what I want to say about this. This is what when I said earlier, that sometimes we are viewing these things through the lens of a Eurocentric person. People of African descent explored the world before anybody else because there was only us. So this idea that it's Italian means that Italians have taken the test. But it all comes back to Africa. It's just a spin-off. You know, we have children, we have cousins. Cousins are spin-offs of our families. It doesn't change who you are. Well, I'm looking at you, and I know you don't look Italian. Whatever that means today, right? I'm going to see if I have your map so I can give that to you. This is Carol. I appreciate you being a good sport. I appreciate you being a good sport about this. And I'm also glad that you, so wait a minute, one more thing about Mrs. Gilbert. She told me a story about her father who used to play at the Hippodrome Theater. You want to tell that story? Well, let me just shorten it up. Let me just tell you the story. When the musicians used to come into town, her father was a backup musician. So he got to meet all of them over at the, and I'm like, don't you think that's important information to be sharing? She's like, very modest, very modest. No, no, no. But then he went on to New York City where he continued to be a musician and a singer. I thought that's valuable information that somebody who's doing an oral history project should be talking about these stories or talking to these descendants because there's a whole lot more to share. All right, Ms. Gilbert, I'm going to ask that you take that seat behind me and so that Mrs. Rodwell can come forward. She said she's Italian. All right. Reclaim your time. Any way you want to do that. Hello. I met Blanche Durant Rodwell at the community day, and I had them fill out pedigree charts, as much information as they could, and some of them could not get past their grandparents. So the information that's contained in their binders is a significant improvement on what it is that they had prior to that. I was able to go back to 1784. Benjamin and Dicey, well, let me give you this story. Benjamin and Dicey were owned by somebody named G down in North Carolina. But Dicey didn't have a last name. You wonder why women give up their names. This is why. She didn't have a last name. So she took Benjamin's first name as her last name so she could have one. So he was Benjamin G and she was Dicey Benjamin. That's how she coped with that. This guy, William G., who quote unquote owned them, in his 1813 will, he gave them, dispersed them in his will to his daughter. She died and she left them to somebody, her son named Charles, in 1841, and their son Thomas. So this family was separated. Thomas was sent away in 1852, and it was the same year that Benjamin G. died. Dicey and their children remained with their son Theodore until the Civil War. But then there was a son named Isaac. On May 31st, I found a record that Isaac moved to Tennessee, where he registered with the Freedmen's Bureau for food. He took his mother, who was elderly, and said, look, I'm her only child. We need food rations to the end of the month. So that whole war, even though it was a good thing, there were some other consequences that came that we don't ever talk about, including this transgenerational poverty that came out of it. They went back to South Carolina, where they came from by 1880, and his mother was 95 years old. She lived with him for 5 more years. He took care of his mama. And when she died in 1885, she was 100 years old. They are your 4th great-grandparents on Isaac's side. And James Pettigrew, who was born in 1800, and Susan, born in 1805, are your 4th great-grandparents on Louisa's side. Benjamin and Dicey had 9 children. James and Susan had 13 children, so I'm looking at both sides of your family now. Isa married Louisa Pettigrew in 1874 and had Della. Della married a guy named Sumter, and they had Sarah. Sarah married Samuel Durant, and Jerome married Lula May, and Della had Sarah, who married Jerome, who had Lula May, who had you. Yes. That's your line. Yes. All right. Your DNA was in the L3 group, but it was a little more specific. It says Guinea-Bissau and Lebanon. So there's a migration. It's that force. Remember, so there's separation. So you had people that are going over there, people going over there. It doesn't change that. The DNA doesn't lie, and it doesn't change. Guinea-Bissau and Lebanon. Yeah. All right. That's the abbreviated version of the history of the Gilpin descendants. Here you see them. You guys know they were here. I've shown you that they were here. And in spite of everything that went on around them, they endured. So no matter what you are facing, keep in mind, it's in your DNA. Don't ever forget it. So, we're going to go on and have ourselves a wedding. So I'm going to ask for your indulgence while we situate our descendants stage left and prepare for Reverend Jarvis Bailey and Reverend Dr. Paula Parker to begin the ceremonies. Oh, wait. Come on up here. She's so quiet over there. One more, Carolyn Cotman. Why didn't you say something, Carolyn? Yes. I'm so sorry. I never met Carolyn. We did this all over the phone. She was willing, and her daughter, Clarity, has been working on the research for the past 3 years. And you know what's funny? You know what I found out about you? I did this project in Fredericksburg, and I know your distant cousins. In fact, they were in the project. All right? So the line they were looking for was Carter. And Clarity shared her information with me, and she kind of got stuck on this guy named Nelson. Nelson was born in 1819 to Hannah Johnson. I'm sorry, in 1819. No. 1819, he married Hannah Johnson. They had 6 children together. Nelson's father was John Carter, born 1778, and the mother was Martha Ann Day. They lived in Charles City, and the Shirley Plantation is where they came from. The Carter family starts with the McIntosh family. There's Walkers and Whites on this Shirley Plantation, but they had fluid locations, so they weren't just in Charlotte. They were in Spotsylvania County. They were in Lancaster, Culpeper. Most of them are in Orange. And by the way, the Carter farm is a Century farm, black farm in Orange County, and that is still owned by the family today. Michael Carter Jr. also runs the agricultural programs for Virginia Union and Virginia State. John Carter, born in 1778, was freed by 1835. And he was one of 36 Africans. Africans before 1865, African Americans after 1865. He was one of 36 African signatories to a petition filed by Richard H. Henderson, who was the attorney for the Commonwealth of the County of Loudoun. Henderson, get this, Henderson was petitioning the state legislature, and on December 17, 1836, he was pleading with them to reconsider their 1834 law that required free Africans to leave the state within a year or risk being fined, jailed, or losing their freedoms. And this law, of course, was put in place as a result of Nat Turner's rebellion. Michael did what I want all of the participants to do in this project, is that he took the information I gave him and he did his own research, and do you know what he found? He found out that the McIntoshes, the black ones, had a business called McIntosh Building Company, and that his ancestors helped to build Monticello. That means they're your ancestors too. So I'm just waiting for Monticello to give y'all a call. And so they can, when they do the tours, when you're looking at the buildings and the bricks, there were some names and faces behind it to represent it. Your DNA was in the L2 group, but it was a little more detailed. And it points to Brazil, Grenada, Yoruba, Yemen, Ethiopian, which is also found in Trinidad and Tobago, the Maroons in Jamaica. They were scattered all over. So if you're going to go back to the beginning, it would be Ethiopian. All right. All right. All right, so now we really are going to have this wedding. There's going to be an arc coming out of here. We're going to get, if you guys can just stage left, we're going to get the stage cleared off. Thank you. You are very welcome. Thank you. Give them a round of applause. Um,
Let me see.
Excuse me. You all can use this mic for the. Oh, you guys are. Gave us the. So I was thinking of having a plan was you switch off and on. It's like I do. Well, I guess we have 8 participants. Let's do one piece. Yeah, I'm one. I think I'm doing 2. You do 2. Yeah. I do 2. And you do 2. Perfect. Yes. Excuse me. No, excuse me. Sorry about that. Thank you. Thank you so much. Awesome. Love. Hey. It's apparently the live stream looks awesome, so thank you guys. Everything's going well. If they're loud, this is the mic from the podium. I grabbed it because I wasn't sure if they were grabbing.
Representatives, where do you want the other? They got like 4 or 5 descendants. Just, just give me a couple. Just like you. Play. The most remarkable moment in life is when you meet the person who makes you feel complete, the person who makes the world a beautiful and magical place, the person with whom you share a bond so special that it transcends normal relationships and becomes something so pure and so wonderful that you can't imagine spending another day of your life without them. 183 years ago, Green Clay and Nancy Clay fell in love and made a commitment to be together for the rest of their lives. Their first children, or their first child, Thomas, was born in 1843, and in spite of the world around them, they continued to have children, unsure if the same machine of cruelty that brought them together would find a way to separate them from their children. Sandy, William, Haywood, Perlonia, Lucy, and Joseph. Though their hearts and everyday lives were joined together as mother and father, husband and wife, they did not enjoy the privileges of being married. Today, we will correct that record by honoring their humanity as husband and wife. The descendants of Green Clay and Nancy Clay will stand in their place to receive and reaffirm the ceremonial vows their ancestors did not have the opportunity to take in Fredericksburg 162 years ago. Who gives this woman Nancy to be married to this man Green? The descendants will say, we do.
We do.
Who gives this man Green to be married to this woman Nancy?
We do.
We do. The circle is a universal symbol with extensive meaning. It represents totality, wholeness, original perfection, the self, the infinite, eternity, and timelessness. Place this symbol on your wrist. Do you, the descendants Promise to love, honor, and cherish the memories of your ancestors from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer. Say we do.
We do.
Inasmuch as Green Clay and Nancy Clay pledged themselves to each other and their children until death did they part, I hereby reaffirm their fealty to the sacred bond of marriage and reclaim that time in the annals of American history. Amen. You got to jump the broom. Yeah. That's your broom. This way? Oh, here's another bracelet. Yes. You,
Here, you're going to take this. Bonita Scott Gilbert. The most remarkable moment in the life is when you meet the person who makes you feel complete, the person who makes the whole world a beautiful and magical place, the person with whom you share a bond so special that it transcends normal relationships and becomes something so pure and so wonderful that you can't imagine spending another day of your life without them. Reverend John Jasper and Candace Jordan began their family in 1843. While John, the abolitionist preacher of the gospel, was saving souls and black bodies, his example did not fall short on his son, Shedrick, born in 1840. The self-determined 21-year-old Shedrick could not accept the mediocrity of otherness, and he did his part to liberate the masses by enlisting as a private in the 45th Regiment of the United States Colored Troops, where witnessed both the fall of Petersburg and the surrender of General Robert E. Lee. Having secured freedom for himself and his parents, Reverend John Jasper founded 6 Mount Zion Baptist Church not far from where he lived in Jackson Ward. Though Candace and John's hearts and everyday lives were joined together, and though they were committed to the fealty of marriage, they did not enjoy the privileges of being married in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Today, we will correct the record by honoring their humanity as husband and wife. The descendants of Candace and John will stand in their place to receive and reaffirm the ceremonial vows their ancestors did not have the opportunity to take in Richmond in 183 years ago. Who gives this woman, Candace, to this man, John?
I do.
Who gives this man, John, to this woman, Candace?
I do.
The circle is a universal symbol with extensive meaning. It represents totality, wholeness, original perfection, the self, the infinite, eternity, and timelessness. Place these symbols on each other. Put it on. Put them on. Do you, the descendants, promise to love, honor, cherish the memories of your ancestors from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer?
I do.
In so much as Candace and John pledged themselves to each other and their children until death did they part, I hereby reaffirm their fealty to the sacred bond of marriage and reclaim their time in the annals of American history. Amen. Congratulations. Jump the broom. Take it.
yeah, we'll do it kind of like this, okay? Janice Allen. The The most remarkable moment in life is when you meet the person who makes you feel complete, the person who makes the world a beautiful and magical place, the person with whom you share a bond so special that it transcends normal relationships and becomes something so pure and so wonderful that you can't imagine spending another day of your life without them. Amanda Young was born in 1835 in Caroline County. The oldest of 7 siblings, she was separated from her parents and her siblings at an early age. Removed from the gentleness of her mother's touch and the protective glare of her father's eye, Amanda did find comfort with Daniel Anderson Sr. until death they did part. Together, they had Kitty, Susan, twins Susan and Emma, Winnie, Daniel Jr., John, Mary, Jane, Jeannie, and Augustus. Though their hearts and everyday lives were joined together, they were not committed and permitted to marry. They did not receive the privileges of being united in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Today, we will correct the record by honoring their humanity as husband and wife. The descendants of Amanda and Daniel Anderson Sr. will stand in their place to receive and reaffirm the ceremonial vows their ancestors did not have the opportunity to take in Caroline County 212 years ago. Who gives this woman Amanda to be married to this man, Daniel?
We do.
Who gives this man, Daniel, to be married to this woman, Amanda?
We do.
The circle is a universal symbol with extensive meaning. It represents totality, wholeness, original perfection, the self, the infinite, eternity, and timelessness. Place these symbols on each other. Do you, the descendants, promise to love, honor, and cherish the memories of your ancestors from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer? Say we do.
We do.
Inasmuch as Amanda and Daniel Anderson Sr. pledged themselves to each other and their children until death did they part, I hereby reaffirm their fealty to the sacred bond of marriage and reclaim their time in the annals of American history. Amen.
We can do it.
Go ready?
Yeah.
That's your broom.
Thanks, cousin.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
You go.
You also, the most remarkable moment in life is when you meet the person who makes you feel complete, the person who makes the world a beautiful and magical place, the person with whom you share a bond so special that it transcends normal relationships and becomes something so pure and so wonderful that you can't imagine spending another day of your life without them. Benjamin G. was born in 1784, and his common law wife, Dicey Benjamin, was born in 1785. Dicey, having no last name of her own, took the first name of her husband. They had 2 children, Harriet and Isaac, and 9 grandchildren that Dicey welcomed into the world without her beloved Benjamin, who transitioned in 1852. Dicey was cared for by her devoted son, Isaac, until she died in 1885. at the age of 100. 4 generations later, the G descendants arrived in Richmond from Charleston, South Carolina. Now united in glory, the descendants of Benjamin G. and Dicey Benjamin will stand in their place to receive and reaffirm the ceremonial vows their ancestors did not have the opportunity to take 220 years ago. Who gives this woman Dicey to this man Benjamin?
We do.
Who gives this man Benjamin to this woman Dicey?
We do.
The circle is a universal symbol of extensive meaning. It represents totality, wholeness, original perfection, the self, the infinite, eternity, and timelessness. Place these symbols on each other. It doesn't matter. Do you, the descendants, promise to love, honor, and cherish the memories of your ancestors from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer?
We do.
Insomuch as Benjamin and Dicey pledged themselves to each other and their children until death did they part, I hereby reaffirm their fealty to the sacred bond of marriage and reclaim their time in the annals of American history. Jump the broom.
Michelle Bryant.
Yes. Yes, that's me.
The most remarkable moment in life is when you meet the person who makes you feel complete. The person who makes the world a beautiful and magical place. The person with whom you share a bond so special that it transcends normal relationships and becomes something so pure and so wonderful that you can imagine spending another day of your life without them. Rhoda Langston and Charles Butler had their first child, Jacob, during the height of the American Revolution in 1775, and their second child, Josiah, born in 1813 during the War of 1812. While they lived most of their adult lives free from the sins of human bondage, they endured the full range of their humanity as grandparents and great-grandparents of many. Though their hearts and everyday lives were joined together, and they were committed to the fealty of marriage, they did not enjoy the privileges of being married in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Today, we will correct the record by honoring their humanity as husband and wife. The descendants of Rhoda and John will stand in their place to receive and reaffirm the ceremonial vows their ancestors did not have the opportunity to take in Richmond 192 years ago. Who gives this woman Rhoda to this Charles man?
I do.
To this man Charles?
We do.
Who gives this man Charles to this woman Rhoda?
We do.
The circle is a universal symbol with extensive meaning. It represents totality, wholeness, original perfection, the self, the infinite, eternity, and timelessness. Place these symbols on each other. Do you, the descendants, promise to love, honor, and cherish the members of your ancestors from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer? Say, we do.
We do.
We do.
And as much as Rhoda and Charles pledged themselves to each other and their children until death did they part, I hereby reaffirm their fealty to the sacred bond of marriage and reclaim their time in the annals of American history. Amen.
Amen.
Yeah, you can step if you want,
One,
as long as you get over
two,
it.
three.
That's yours.
You did great. What are you saying?
The most remarkable moment, this is for you. The most remarkable moment in life is when you meet the person who makes you feel complete, the person who makes the world a beautiful and magical place, the person with whom you share a bond so special that it transcends normal relationships and becomes something so pure and so wonderful that you can't imagine spending another day of your life without them. John Clark was born in the same year that the United States Constitution was signed, without protections of the Bill of Rights, a document that did not apply to him, though he was born and raised in the United States. His common law wife, Fanny, was made invisible, for she had no record of her parents or date of birth, but neither a last name nor birthday prevented her and her beloved John from conceiving their only son on record, Abraham, who was born during the War of 1812. For John and Fanny, who witnessed the nations fighting for the rights of autonomy, endured through the hypocrisy to live out the best lives they could. The descendants of Fanny and John Clark will stand in their place to receive and reaffirm the ceremonial vows their ancestors did not have the opportunity to take in the Commonwealth of Virginia 211 years ago. Who gives this woman, Fanny, to this man, John?
We do.
Who gives this man, John, to this woman, Fanny?
We do.
The circle is a universal symbol with extensive meaning. It represents totality, wholeness, original perfection, the self, the infinite, eternity, and timelessness. Place these symbols on each other. Do you, the descendants, promise to love, honor, and cherish the memories of your ancestors from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer?
We do.
Insomuch as Fanny and John pledged themselves to each other and their children until death did them part, I hereby reaffirm their fealty to the sacred bond of marriage and reclaim their time in the annals of American history. Amen. You may jump the broom.
Oh, not you. Carolyn Cotman. The most remarkable moment in life is when you meet the person who makes you feel complete. The person who makes the world a beautiful and magical place. The person with whom you share a bond so special that it transcends normal relationships and becomes something so pure and so wonderful that you can't imagine spending another day of your life without them. John Carter was born in Charles City, Virginia, on the Shirley Plantation just 4 years after America became a sovereign nation. At the age of 25, he was released from bondage and free to do limited things in society. The love of his life, Martha Ann Day, was not. They started their family late, but their progeny lives on. John and Martha lived long enough to meet their grandson, Nelson Carter Jr., but they did not see the day that freedom came for all their family members less than 15 years later. Now united in glory, the descendants of Martha, Ann Day, and John Clark will stand in their place to receive and affirm the ceremonial vows their ancestors did not have the opportunity to take 220 years ago. Who gives this woman Martha to this man John?
We do.
We do.
Who gives this man John to this woman Martha?
We do.
The circle is a universal symbol with extensive meaning. It represents totality, wholeness, original perfection, the self, the infinite, eternity, and timelessness. Place these symbols on each other. I know you told me you've never been married.
No, I know.
She's going to place that on you.
All right.
Carolyn said, I've never been married, so this is my chance. Do you, the descendants, promise to love, honor, and cherish the memories of your ancestors from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer? We do.
We do.
We do.
Inasmuch as Martha and John pledged themselves to each other and their children until death did they part, I hereby reaffirm their fealty to the sacred bond of marriage and reclaim their time in the annals of American history. Amen.
Amen.
All right, you got it. You jump the broom. There you go.
Which way? Right here, this way.
And that's your broom. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I got nerves.
Vincent Brown, the descendant. It's a party going on back there. You know how we do. The most remarkable moment in life is when you meet the person who makes you feel complete, the person who makes the world a beautiful and magical place, the person with whom you share a bond so special that it transcends normal relationships and becomes something so pure and so wonderful that you can't imagine spending another day of your life without them. You'll get there. Alan Balthrop was born in Warren, North Carolina, where he met the love of his life, Lizzie Barnes. Together, they had at least two children, Emma and Kelly. Emma and her brother Kelly were fortunate enough to be young children who did not have to live in an ownership society. When the War of Rebellion was over, the dream of self-reliance that had become their reality was reborn. Now united in glory, the descendants of Alan Balthrop and Lizzie Barnes will stand in their place to receive and reaffirm the ceremonial vows their ancestors did not have the opportunity to take 220 years ago. Who gives this woman Lizzie to this man Alan? Say we do. It's on.
We do.
It's on. Who gives this man Alan to this woman Lizzie?
We do.
The circle is a universal symbol with extensive meaning. It represents totality, wholeness, original perfection, the self, the infinite, eternity, and timelessness. You're going to place this on yourself as a symbol, and you're going to place this on one of your cousins, or your mother, or your sister. All right? The descendants promise to love, honor, and cherish the members of their ancestors from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer. We do. Inasmuch as Lizzie and Alan pledged themselves to each other and their children until death did they part, I hereby reaffirm their fealty to the sacred bond of marriage and reclaim their time in the annals of American history. Amen.
Amen.
All right, you're going to jump the broom. All right, that's your, all right, you're going to stay right here. They're coming. They're coming out. We're done. Come on down.
No, you all go ahead. Keep on. No, go keep going. Get all of you're the important ones.
Come on down, son. Paula. Dr. P.
Huh? Keep going. Go ahead down. Go ahead down.
Before we conclude today's program, I want to take a moment to thank the Virginia Museum of History and Culture for hosting us today. I want to take a moment to thank Dr. Paula Royster for her partnership and incredible efforts. I would also like to thank our team, our incredible team with the City of Richmond, the Office of Human Services, and the Office of Strategic Communications and Civic Engagement for all of your support in making today happen. And last, and certainly not least, Reggie Gordon for his vision for this effort, and our families for your participation. Mayor LeVar Stoney, who couldn't be here today but wholeheartedly supports this effort, often refers to our city, once a capital of Confederacy, as a city of compassion. We are a city with a complex and nuanced past, making great strides to acknowledge that past and aspire for greater as we celebrate our present and look to the future. As we leave here today, consider how you will reclaim your time, better understand your past, connect with the present, and imagine your own future. Thank you for joining us today.